Welcome back everybody, my name is Nick930 and this is my final review for Ubisoft's newest open world action adventure game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Assassin's Creed Odyssey takes many of the successful new elements utilized in Origins and builds upon them, with a ton of enhancements to the RPG system, slightly improved visuals, and a new ancient Greece setting. The world is massively ambitious and filled with things to do, places to see, and there's quite a few old ideas brought out of retirement to better round out the experience. But before we get into that, let's begin by talking about the new approach to Assassin's Creed's story. Odyssey takes place in ancient Greece during the Peloponnesian War. You play as either Alexios or Cassandra, which, aside from their gender, are practically identical in terms of how the story unfolds around them, with no unique personality of their own. I was expecting something more along the lines of Syndicate, where both characters had their own unique personalities, but Odyssey feels more like the protagonists are just default skins in a character creator, mostly devoid of any true personality outside of a few fun moments scattered throughout the main quest storyline. And this was likely a choice made by Ubisoft Quebec to better align with the new ability to choose dialogue options during conversations. This handles very similarly to the popular action RPGs like Fallout 4 and The Witcher 3, with very short, simple text responses that don't necessarily represent the actual dialogue spoken by the character after being chosen. This can lead to confusing interactions with NPC characters, where you mean to say one thing, but the protagonist says something similar in a completely different tone than anticipated. But this didn't really annoy me as much as the actual voice acting performances, which were surprisingly subpar when compared to past entries in the series. Alexios sounds excessively macho, and it's difficult to get used to, as he comes off as he's trying to be macho instead of feeling natural. An early ally in the game, Marcos, is the absolute worst though. This character is intentionally supposed to be an annoying person to deal with, as he's consistently getting you into trouble with late payments to a mercenary, but his voice is frustrating to listen to and feels completely out of place. Thankfully, once you leave the initial island after a lengthy tutorial segment, the voice acting becomes more bearable, but that's mainly because you rarely are stuck talking to the same characters for long. You'll spend most of the game running around various city-states, completing tasks to get closer to key targets, and conquering regions to gain access to even more valuable key targets. And without spoiling anything, I have to say I was pretty sold on the general premise behind the game's storyline. It felt different enough from past entries, and it also didn't feel like it was needlessly pulling me away from the gameplay experience with the typical present-day storyline. Though that is still very much present in this game, and seems to continue directly after the events of Origins, with Layla becoming more of a central present-day protagonist, much like how Desmond was in the early years of the series. But where Odyssey really shines is its gameplay experience, assuming you enjoyed the shift to a more RPG-focused experience in Origins. Odyssey in many ways feels the same as Origins, from its control layout, its combat design, and its UI. But there are a few nice additions that help Odyssey stand out from Origins, making it a worthwhile new experience. First off, one of the biggest changes to the game is the heavier emphasis on naval warfare. Thanks to Odyssey being set in ancient Greece, Ubisoft decided to expand on the naval combat segments from Origins, and make it a part of the open world, with players needing to control a massive ship across the sea to island hop between city-states. This makes the experience feel much more in line with Black Flag, where players need to engage in naval warfare, board enemy ships, and steal their cargo. It's a fun gameplay mechanic, but it does feel slightly gutted considering we're dealing with arrows and spears as opposed to powerful cannons and explosives. It fits perfectly in the time period, and I personally appreciate that. But the actual act of attacking ships and boarding them does feel a bit less impressive, as you simply need to hop from one ship to the other instead of swinging from a rope, and even the ability to choose what you do with the ship and crew afterwards seems to have been changed from how it functioned in Black Flag. Still, I love that the naval warfare has made a return and feels like it's more seamlessly incorporated into the absolutely massive open world experience. Next, I want to talk about conquering the map. Now, this feature seems to be heavily inspired by the likes of Syndicate, in that players will need to complete various smaller tasks in distinct regions in order to dominate that area. You can steal treasure, kill soldiers, or assassinate a military leader. It's a fun mechanic that works well to force players to experience each unique area in its entirety, but it can get a bit repetitive, and seems like a way to extend the somewhat shallow story experience. As I said before, the controls remain practically identical to Origins, aside from some new special combat moves. After unlocking them through the skill tree, you can perform special moves like a Spartan kick or a charge, which can be used during combat encounters with individual cooldowns. This adds a lot more variety to the combat, and can help give players a tactical edge if they feel they're being outnumbered or outleveled. There's a bunch of new moves that, much like Origins, border on the ridiculous in terms of what's possible for a human being. Though the game explains this by replacing the classic hidden blade with a new precursor artifact called the Spear of Leonidas. I'm fine with this, as the game has never really been the most realistic, though it is a shame seeing the original signature weapon removed from the overall experience. Next, I wanted to talk about the game's visual design. As I mentioned in the direct comparison with AC Origins, Odyssey looks phenomenal, with beautifully detailed environments, excellent character designs, and a colorful tone. Though what I failed to mention in my comparison was the volumetric clouds, which are actually really impressive in Odyssey. I can't recall if this existed in Origins to this extent, but I found actual realistic cloud coverage that not only blocked out the sun, but also triggered a slight drizzle. Generally, games just randomly trigger a weather change and the entire open world instantly switches its weather to a rainstorm, but the weather in Odyssey seems to travel realistically, or at least it appears that way. This, however, can seriously hurt performance on even the most high-end hardware, so if you're struggling to maintain a steady framerate, it's recommended that you lower the volumetric cloud setting first. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a gorgeous recreation of ancient Greece, with a massive open world to explore, and another step towards switching the series over to being a full-blown action RPG. The story, while occasionally strong, often loses its footing because of the poor voice acting performances, and I feel as though the ability to choose either a male or female character is a bit disingenuous, considering the much stronger personalities of male and female duos in past entries. If you're a big fan of what Ubisoft accomplished with Assassin's Creed Origins, then Odyssey is absolutely worth checking out, as it delivers more of that same great gameplay experience, with a bit of Black Flag and Syndicate mixed in on top. And if you haven't picked up an Assassin's Creed title before, then Odyssey's story is disconnected enough that it would be a perfect time to jump in. But if you were disappointed with the direction Ubisoft has taken the Brotherhood with Origins and were looking for that classic stealth action experience, then Odyssey likely won't appeal to you either. Hope you guys enjoyed this review, and if you want to learn more about the Assassin's Creed franchise, be sure to check out my retrospective piece on the full series. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this posted every week.